Hi, welcome to this presentation on Netiquette, which is the rules of the road on the information superhighway that we call the Internet. In this presentation, we'll be talking about some basic expectations for how we use online tools to communicate in an online class. The first thing we have to recognize is that the Internet is a social place, and even though you might be sitting in front of a computer screen, you're actually interacting with other real live people. And as such, we have to think about how those interactions should go and develop some basic expectations as a group. Netiquette then is just the accepted guidelines we have for those interactions in specific contexts. Now, by specific context, I just mean thinking about how we're communicating and why we're communicating and who we're communicating with. You probably communicate differently with your parents versus with your friends, or how you communicate at school with teachers or in your classes. So you want to think about that anytime that you're doing something online. Who's receiving the message? What is the message about? Why are you sending that message? And to make sure that you're doing your best to satisfy the needs of everyone involved in that communication. We have three main online tools that we would use in this course for discussions and for interaction. One is a discussion board, second is instant messaging, and then the third is email. And email is a really great way to communicate. Certainly in the professional world, a lot of communication is done by email. Sometimes students don't use it as much in their own personal lives, but it's actually a really good way to ask questions of teachers, to share things, and so forth. So it is an expectation that you'll use all three of these tools during the class. Before we get into each one of those tools individually, just want to think of a general question that you can ask yourself anytime that you're communicating online, and that's, am I communicating in a way that's respectful, relevant, and clear to the other person? If you're doing those three things, if you're being respectful, if your topic is relevant and you're writing about things that actually have to do with the course or the specific discussion that's going on, and if you're doing your best to be clear, then you're probably fine. Now, it is okay sometimes to disagree with somebody. We just have to make sure that we're being a good, positive influence on the community and be nice about it. So you can see the examples there, disagreeing in an unproductive way versus in a way that conveys care and concern for the other person, but still expressing your ideas. So discussion boards then have a couple of important things that we should be aware of. One is to just be aware of group norms when you're posting to a discussion board. So you can think about what kinds of posts go on there, what kind of language do people use, and so forth. We also want to make sure we give credit to others. Now, this could be credit to ideas you get from the book or a video, but it could also be credit for other people's ideas in the discussion. So if you read something from a classmate and you really like that, just acknowledge that that was their idea when you say post it to someone else. Thirdly, you want to make sure that you use proper grammar and spelling. So this is, in a discussion board, you're often being evaluated, and it is academic work. So you want to use that academic voice that might be a little more formal than how you might write or express yourself outside of an academic context. Lastly, you want to make sure that you explain your ideas and feelings. So if you just say good job or I agree, that doesn't really tell us very much. You want to explain why you agree with somebody or why you think they did a good job. And just be respectful at all times. You can see in the lower left there, our main rule is to only write what you'd say to the person face to face. So think of it as a discussion, and if you don't think you'd feel comfortable saying something to their face, then you probably shouldn't be putting it online either. Secondly is instant messaging. Now, instant messaging is a little bit of a more informal type of communication. So oftentimes if you're collaborating on a Google Doc or doing something with a group and you want to use instant messaging, that can be a good tool. But a couple things there. One is just to use your manners. So you want to make sure that you're being respectful with even those informal communications. Secondly is to avoid acronyms that everybody that you're communicating with might not know. So an acronym would be something like LOL, which is laugh out loud. Now a lot of people know that one, so that might be a safe one. But if you get into some other acronyms and there might be people in your group who don't know all of them, it can just create confusion. Thirdly is to keep it short and on topic. And instant messaging is more of a quick communication. You can see the example there on the screen. They're sharing some ideas about files and so forth, and just staying really well on topic. Not a lot of extra stuff like, oh, hey, Mayor, or hey, you, or all this kind of thing. Just being relevant to what they need to exchange the information. Lastly is that it's okay to use emoticons in instant messaging. It is a little more informal if you like doing that, but if you're sprinkling all of your chats with dozens of emoticons, then you might wonder if that's really the best use of your time, and tone it down a little bit. Thirdly then is email. Now email is a great tool for communication that's used certainly in the working and professional world a lot. Some students don't use email as much in their own personal lives, but in this class oftentimes I'll send things by email, or it's really actually a good way to get a hold of me and to ask questions. So with emails, a couple of things. One is just to use subject lines. You want to make sure that your email, the subject of your email tells the reader what the email will be about. Because if it's someone like me, I get dozens and dozens of emails every single day, and I'm scanning through them quickly, and it's helpful if I know before I open the email what information I'm looking for. Secondly is to make sure you sign your name. So some email accounts, people don't really have their name. They have email address like GG Rocket Boy or whatever, and I don't necessarily know who that is. So you always want to make sure you put your name at the end of the email, just like you would at a letter. And thirdly, you want to make sure that you're writing for your audience. So email could be very formal communication, or it could be fairly informal, but you want to think about who your audience is when you're sending that email. If you're sending an email to me, your teacher, then you probably want to make sure you use a little bit more of a formal tone so that I understand what your message is and address me in the proper way. Lastly, you want to make sure you format emails for easy reading. So if you do have a lot to say, avoid putting it in just a giant block of text, and instead separate out your ideas. Just hit enter a couple of times, and that way it's easy for me to quickly scan through and find the information that I need. So with email, the big rule is to be clear about the meaning and topic of your message, because email is used to convey information effectively, but it can also be sometimes a lot of clutter in an inbox, and so you want to make sure that your message gets through. So in conclusion, we could think about our online communications as an extension of ourself. 4 words that come to mind as I wrap that up are to think, contribute, respond, and respect. So think about things before you post them. Because once you post them, it's often too late to get it back. If you send off an email, it just is what it is, and hopefully you've sent the message, or especially if it's something that you have some feelings about, you want to make sure that you keep those in check. Contribute just means to be an active member of the group and make sure that you are looking at what other people post in, say, a discussion board and responding to it. Responding then it kind of goes back to that idea of thinking, and that we respond to what others say, not just react to it. So if somebody says that they don't like something that you wrote, you want to just take a moment and compose yourself and then respond to it in a constructive kind of way. And then lastly, just that idea of respect. We also want to make sure then that we use the golden rule, so to treat others as we would want to be treated. That's important at all times. And part of that is to recognize that the work that we put online is permanent. It goes onto our server and it's recorded, and different people have access to that. So you want to make sure whatever you say, you're really willing to stand behind. Thirdly, even though you're online and that might not seem like something where you're being treated as a real person, you really are just conveying yourself. So if you take time to be thoughtful and you write in your best possible form and try to contribute your ideas, That's really important. And lastly, then, that you're part of that community. So, you might be sitting in front of a computer screen, but really you're with a group of people sharing ideas using this amazing tool we call the internet. So thanks. I hope that makes sense, and I will be in touch online soon.